SS Princess Alice was a fine-looking steamer. Originally built in Scotland in 1865, she was named PS Bute and served 2 years up there before being brought down here and renamed the Princess Alice after one of Queen Victoria's daughters. She was captained by William Grinstead. Now this particular night, the 3rd of September 1878, the Princess Alice was making her normal run, the moonlight trip, from Swan Pier to Sheerness and back. She did her normal stops along the way. Many of her passengers were coming back from visiting the pleasure gardens at Rocherville. On her return journey to Swan Pier, she left Rocherville at about 6:30 in the evening. She was close to her full capacity, having been given permission by the Board of Trade to carry a maximum of 936 passengers while travelling in calm water. Exact numbers were unknown, as only those on the ship would know, as they also kept no passenger lists. It was just have a ticket, hop on board situation. At about 7:30 p.m, Woolwich Pier was in sight, and lots of the passengers would have been getting off there, so they probably all started to get ready. Another ship, the Bywell Castle, was also in sight. Now the Bywell Castle was keeping mainly to the middle. It was a bigger ship, and it only drifted from one side to the other when another ship was coming her way. Captain Grinstead of the SS Princess Alice was also following normal waterman's practices. He was going against the tide. So he was seeking slack water. Slack water apparently is the part of the water that is not affected by the tide, so obviously easier to go through with a boat. This unfortunately had the Bywell Castle on them far quicker than anybody expected. "Full reverse!" was shouted by the Bywell Castle, but it was all too late. The Princess Alice was hit. The Bywell crew dropped ropes down the sides of the passengers to grab hold of. They threw floating items in so others can cling hold for safety. Their lifeboats were also launched. Other boats nearby did the same. Local residents tried to help by launching their own boats from the shores. Just 4 minutes later, she was gone. There were many factors in the demise of so many passengers. To start with, the ladies' dresses were big and bulky and not suited to being wet. They had to be very good swimmers to be able to get out of that. And of course many people couldn't swim then. They had to rely on something that they could grab hold of so they could float. If they didn't have that, they went under. And then there was the difficulty of getting out from the ship's insides. Of course this was all mixed up with another more disgusting situation. Just a few hours before, it was common practice then to empty sewage into the Thames. And it happened to be right by where the Princess Alice went down. Plus in the Thames you had the output of local factories, chemicals and such like, and there was a fire that day apparently, which meant that there was petrol and oil also in the Thames. It was not a very nice concoction at all. Queues of family and onlookers crowded round to hear of their loved ones to find out whether they'd survived or whether they had perished. Of the 130 odd passengers that were actually pulled out of the water, a few of them still didn't survive because of the putrid water they'd been in and ingested. Local fishermen were paid £2 a day to find bodies and £5 per body. As you can imagine, this occasionally led to fights over the corpses. Identification was tough as the bodies were starting to decay already, due to the water pollution mainly. They were kept locally to where they were found, so families had to travel from one place to another searching for their loved ones. The inquest itself started the next day. 2 months it lasted, and hours upon hours of evidence was heard. On the 13th of November, they shut the jury of 19 men in a room and said they were not to leave till they'd come to a verdict. While this was going on, the Board of Trade had their own inquest. Now the coroner's jury findings were: the Bywell Castle should have stopped and reversed engines earlier. The Princess Alice should have stopped and should have turned astern. More stringent navigation rules should be enforced. And the Princess Alice, although seaworthy, was not manned sufficiently and had insufficient life-saving equipment. Whereas the Board of Trade decided the Princess Alice had not followed waterway regulations. So she was completely to fault. Little bit of a boring bit coming up, unless you like this. They were in fact in breach of Rule 29, Section D of the Board of Trade Regulations of the Thames Conservancy Board of 1872. If two vessels under steam are meeting end on, or nearly end on, so as to involve risk of collision, the helms of both shall be put to port so that they may pass each other on the port side of the other. While this was all going on, another case was being heard. The Princess Alice was suing the Bywell Castle for £20,000, and the Bywell Castle was countersuing the Princess Alice for £2,000. The Admiralty Division of the High Court of Justice actually found both of them to blame. So neither of them won that one. So what happened to the ships in the end? By the 14th of September, the wreck of the Princess Alice was beached and access to it made easier. More bodies were found, dug out of the silt and slime. Most of the ship itself was dismantled and sold off or used as scrap. The Bywell Castle seems to have been lost at sea off the Bay of Biscay in 1883. All crew and cargo went down. 40 people were on it. Now, because of all this, rules were changed. Waste was treated better. They had sludge boats built, which meant that all of the waste could then be taken straight out into the North Sea, avoiding the Thames completely. The Marine Police Force, who were there on that night, only had rowing boats, so they were deemed insufficient for the future as well. So they got steam launches, which helped them abundantly. And globally, emergency signalling was put onto all ships and boats. It was never discovered how many people died. They say anywhere between 600 and 700. And finally, a memorial cross was put up in 1880 from a sixpenny fund that was created. Then in 2008, a national lottery grant was given for a memorial plaque at Barking Creek. To this day, it still remains the biggest maritime disaster on an internal body of water. Hey, I have a different cat today. This is Mister.